Oh,
Can't see you,
Damir's
man.
blind. We're in trouble.
Oh no. Is that Gallo?
Not my first glass.
Oh,
What kind of fine wine are you drinking, Damir?
Ridge Three Valleys. It's a great blend.
Oh yeah, isn't that it's from I want to say the Ridge, the Three Valleys of the Ridge, correct?
Uh, that being correct, Joe.
Yeah. California.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's California.
definitely knew it was California. I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
either the Sonoma or Napa Valley wine
I don't know.
I
has a
thought it was
couple.
one of those fine
Just
Chicago.
kidding. Sonoma.
Yeah, I told you. My brother-in-law is a sommelier, so I know a bunch of shit.
Okay.
Damn, dude, look at this high definition.
Dan Skinner in HD.
Why don't you start us off, Joe? What are your thoughts on maintaining health and wellness while being a student?
I would say we were pretty active while we were in school. At least I was. I had a dog, so I was constantly going on early morning walks, taking her out to throw the ball. She was a busy dog, border collie. Taking her to the park. What, Dan? Maybe 4 or 5 times a week we take her to the park.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, that dog had got a lot of exercise.
yeah, and then on top of that, we would hit up Gold's Gym, or go to Sundown CrossFit to get some lifting in. Every now and then we were playing with the spin class over at, where was it, North Park, when we go to those
Oh
classes,
yeah,
or we do
yeah. The spin
Elaine's.
the spin studio is sweet.
Yeah, or sometimes we do Elaine's classes, the yoga and the Pilates.
Yeah, that was
So I would say we were a pretty active bunch, which I think was really helpful to just take a break from, the monotony of studying, um, because that definitely gets overwhelming, especially when you get close to boards. I'd say as a student, I think people put too much weight on themselves. They get stressed very easily. It seems very overwhelming when really you can fall back and rely on the fact that you've gone through these courses and hopefully you prepared yourself. But if you were just relying on, like old tests or something like that, then yeah, you should probably be stressing out, because of school, and finding some sort of outlet to take that stress away. What do you think, Dan?
it's funny. I have a different idea on like what that health side was because like going into I don't you guys probably remember this going into school I was um just finishing my time as a performance cyclist, so like I was incredibly light. I was like 100 and I was under 170 pounds, and I remember within the first week of being in school I was like, man, I can't be this light and do this job. I have to like start getting healthy and strong. And Chris, Lindsay, Joe, you guys were huge for not only motivating me to go and work out but also feeding me. I remember Lindsay like unloading all of the remaining potatoes and vegetables onto my plate and just like eating massive amounts of food. And I feel like in my first year in school I gained like 30 pounds. And I think that was my way of trying to find some balance, because I think that when you're an endurance athlete, that I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that you know leveraging things like body weight to for performance is necessarily healthy. So I was probably a little out of whack when I came in there, and so in a lot of ways I feel like chiropractic school helped me balance myself out a little bit. I think exercise is always a good way, and I think like we probably all have ways of explaining to our patients like how we think a good balanced lifestyle looks. Like I always talk about like sleep, diet, exercise, and stress management as being like the big things, or as Damir likes to call them, the traumas, thoughts, and toxins. And and like it's funny because as much as it's easy to joke about that kind of stuff, it's like if you take it for face value and you just there's a lot of stuff that's just timeless. Like there's timeless information and all that too. Like yeah, is it gonna suck if you're working in a job that you hate? Yeah, of course. I think that's you know that's a big negative. um is it also going to suck if you're just eating nothing but Jack in the Box and crappy food? Like probably as well. So I think like having a understanding that when you go through school, that stress management side is going to be hard. It's going to be hard to not be stressed. You're going to have exams and tests and everything, but like what is within your power? Like what can you focus on? Like can you have a few home cooked meals every week? Can you make sure that you're in bed and not smoking dope like Joe and Chris before 9:30. Like, is there some good stuff that you can do? And just look at it as like little victories. And I think you guys are probably the same right now. Lots of patients are going through like their New Year's resolutions. And so I actually find New Year's is great because like if there's going to be any starting point, why not just make it New Year's? So like it's a good flag in the ground moment for people to just say, hey, I'm going to work on my fitness. I'm going to work on my diet. I'm going to work on drinking more water, whatever it is. And so I think that now we're probably advising people that are, not even in chiropractic school, not even students that are trying to make all these lifestyle changes too. So I usually just say go for sustainable and go for the long game, because if you try and make everything perfect, like don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. Just do a few small things and try and be consistent with it, and you'll be better off for it.
Yeah, I mean, shit, for me, I just I knew I was like the first year I was studying all the time every day, and I felt like I was just getting fat and lazy and worthless. So I said, you know what? Every time I study, when I get home, I'm going to do something physical. So I'm going to study while I sit on a bike, or I'm going to study while I walk the dog, or anything like that. It's pretty much all I did the whole time. And then try to cook as much at home. Those
Hey,
were the
Chris,
two things.
one thing I remember you did that was I do now is I remember you got into Audible really good for a while. You were listening to a lot of audiobooks, and you'd go out and walk the
Yeah.
dogs, and then you'd come back and you'd be like, hey, I just listened to this thing. And then that's how I actually started getting into audiobooks too, is because you and Joe and Damir were always talking about it.
Yeah, that's how I got into it too, is because Chris was doing that and recording lectures and listening to them. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I should just start doing that. And that's how I discovered podcasts.
What's a
What did you do,
podcast?
Darren? What did you do?
Podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think kind of similar to Chris. I feel like in the first year, you don't really realize like you're in class 7:30, 8 a.m. to 4:30, almost 5 p.m. So that's a lot of time, being inactive. And then you go back home and you got to eat and study, and you're under a lot of stress and pressure. So it's easy to like binge drink with your friends in a hot tub on Friday, Saturday nights, or it's easy to, eat crappy food. So I think like having friends that can help you stay centered, and, kind of keep each other accountable is important. And then, for me, it was kind of like, oh crap, I got fat. And then it was like, all right, let's get to the gym. So, Joe and I would go to Goals, or go to, Elaine's class or spin classes or anything, just to stay as active as possible, like Chris said. Yeah, otherwise you'll be surprised with how much inactivity you have, in those 3.5 years or whatever it is during the program.
I should say, like at the beginning, like when I first got to school, probably having your priorities straight as a student is extremely helpful, because I didn't have my priorities straight when I first got to school. And luckily, you guys kind of, pushed me in the right direction. I was working at the JCC gym and missing out on lectures, missing out on, extracurricular activities outside of school, missing out on like the first McClure seminar, and you guys coming back all stoked. And I just didn't have my priorities straight, which kind of bit me in the ass at the beginning. So, you guys all sat me down and were like, dude, what are you doing? So once I started figuring out that, okay, maybe my life outside of school needs to be, I don't know, a little more organized and a little less about things outside of school and things more geared towards myself and in school, which kind of, I think, really completely changed my path as not just a person, but definitely as a student, and how seriously I started taking like just everything in general. It really hunkered me down. So I think that's an kind of important thing, because although I felt good, that I was definitely missing out on a bunch of stuff that really set me up for my future.
That's a good point, because I think that, like, particularly Joe, it's like you're such a product of your environment. You started, I think, not pruning away the people you're hanging out with, but you started being more selective of who you hung out with. And I don't know, some people, if you can recognize that, if you know that you're the kind of person that, like, you know, if your fridge is filled with junk food, you're going to eat junk food. But if your fridge is filled with good food, you're going to eat good food. That's kind of me. And so I know that, like, if I hang around people that are motivated and excited and they're passionate about what they're doing, and they're not you know, they're not out staying out late and partying, and not that that's all bad. I think that if that's where you are in your life and you really want to focus on that, you need to surround yourself around good people, which I think is probably one of the best. Like, our school was great. I think, you know, I think every school does their job if you kind of hate the school a little bit when you leave, and you're a little angry about about leaving. But all in all, I think that we got just as much out of being around our group than we did the instructors that were teaching us and the content. Like, I think, like, I feel pretty fortunate to have gone through the program with you guys, because I think that was just like this once in a lifetime kind of crew that we had. Is pretty cool.
We love you too, Dan.
Yeah, big love, guys.
All right. Second question, Chris.
Oh,
Do you do soft tissue work before the adjustment or after?
oh, geez. Do soft tissue work? It's a waste of time. No, yeah. I'd say, like, I don't know if you count it. It'd be like, you know, if you count like specific soft tissue work, like you're trying to accomplish a goal, I do that after. But if you consider warming up the tissue and like stretching someone out and getting some muscles to relax, that's before. So the way I do it is I lay someone down, I put heat on them, I stretch everything out, whatever area they're complaining on, maybe I'll focus on that a little bit more. And then say they want to raise their arm overhead, or they're losing some external rotation in their shoulder, maybe I'll do a couple of adjustments, I'll recheck the range. If that doesn't work, then I'll pull out some soft tissue. Then I'll maybe work the lat or subscap or whatever, right? So yeah, soft tissue work before, just loosen someone up for 5 minutes and then adjust things, recheck them. If they're not good, then add more specific soft tissue work. Seems pretty simple. And then sometimes you're like, you know, you adjust, they can't turn their head to the left. You adjust them, they can turn their head to the left. I'm not going to keep going. It's accomplished, right? I think too many times people do like that time-based care as opposed to, you know, accomplishing a goal. And I think that's a mistake, because you're like, you know, I could get someone every range of motion they wanted back in 15 minutes. And then what, do you want me to just rub their back for another 15 minutes, or are they done? I think they're done. That was the goal. You accomplished it, you can move on. So yeah, a little bit before, and then that specific, maybe a little more aggressive stuff after.
Mm-hmm. Good answer.
What about with needles though?
Yeah, you guys need. I think all three of you guys needles.
So yeah, so now, like, it's weird actually with needles. Is funny because if you came in and I tried to adjust your back and you were just locked up, the next time I would probably needle it first, because I found some people that I can't move a certain area. If I needle it first, I can move them great.
Yep.
So then I kind of just learned that. I'm like, oh, this is Mike. I need to needle his low back, or I have no chance of moving it.
Mm-hmm.
Normally I'd end with needles unless someone's really hard to adjust, then I'd start with it.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, like needling versus like soft tissue work. I think, well, being in BC particularly, I think we're like the only province in Canada that doesn't allow chiros to dry needle. And I think it's just mostly because, like, the other practitioners are so protective of it. So like acupuncturists are very protective. The physical therapists here can needle, and I think that they often rely a lot on that. And that's kind of like, it's something that I see just being overused. Like a lot of patients that are kind of co-managed with me and someone else, it's like their physical therapist is just needling them, and they just continue to do that over and over. But I definitely see a good value in, like, you know, that kind of active release style soft tissue work, or like myofascial work, because in a lot of ways, my thinking around it is like the mechanism is, when you needle, you're creating that reflexive spasm, and you're working, I don't know, you could say with the spindle, or with more like the neurological things that are going on with muscle tone, versus, you know, when you're stretching and elongating muscle, you're like assisting range of motion, you're like lengthening out the connective tissue, you're, you know, having a different influence on like the, you know, blood flow and like the fluid dynamics around the tissue and everything like that. So I think there's probably room for both.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to Chris on that one. and probably same thing for Damir, or I should say Dan and Damir. I think we're probably all very similar. You know, it's pretty rare that when I get someone's range of motion back with, let's say, an adjustment, that I'm going to want to try to hammer more tissue. It doesn't seem productive to me. It's just like, it's more of a shotgun approach. It's like, all right, we figured out the thing that's going to get you what we're looking for, and now we're going to implement, instead of doing more soft tissue. And if this person isn't very good at let's say doing, I don't know, a neck car, for instance, then I'll probably take them through a couple exercises for their neck and say, all right, do these more, and I'll see you next week. But
Yeah,
for the most part, it's going to be like warming tissue up, going after blood flow, you know, and then I'll manipulate, recheck soft tissue, and then from there I can kind of figure things out the next time they come. Like I might start with soft tissue work, like myofascial stretching or whatever it might be, or needling because their back was just so challenging or their neck was so challenging. You know, it's very individually based on that person, and I definitely make note of it for myself, because that'll make more success for when I do the manipulation and then they stand up and they have definitely the greater range of motion we're looking for. Where are you at on that one, Damir?
Yeah, I think very similar to you guys. You know, I think throughout my career, definitely, you know, I've started to incorporate maybe exercises even beforehand, you know, and some of the continuing ed stuff, and that actually takes us into question number 3. But you know, sometimes doing a couple exercises or some breathing work can really change what you feel in the neck, and so that's going to dictate then how you're going to maybe adjust or do your soft tissue work. And so maybe getting them to do some sort of, you know, breathing work for a minute or two might save you a lot of work, soft tissue wise. And then, you know, specifically if there is something going on, let's say, you know, lower neck, C6, C7, you know, I might spend a lot of time, you know, under tension working those deeper tissues. And then when I finish, you know, I'll always finish with an adjustment. And then we'll do our post checks, and we'll do some exercises to kind of download and solidify that new range of motion. But I always like to finish as the adjustment, with the adjustment, I think. And I think you guys are kind of similar.
It's funny. I don't think we've ever actually really talked about that before with each other.
No, I definitely feel like it, and maybe you guys are the same or different, but I definitely feel like I do a lot less soft tissue work than I used to 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I feel like kind of similar to Damir too. I look at it as like I only have so much time with a patient, and I want to be able to make enough time to like get to know them, make sure that we're, you know, going after things more specifically, and then also save time for exercise and things. Because I mean, I would, instead of, you know, pinning and stretching someone's shoulder afterwards, I'd like to get them to use whatever range of motion we've got with the adjustments and mobilizations and stuff like that, and then actually get them moving it. So, and I don't necessarily make it overly complicated too. I'll just use, sometimes it can just be very basic exercise, but I think that can supplement soft tissue work quite well.
Yeah. Okay, final question. The top 2 most impactful postgraduate seminars that you took?
I would say functional range conditioning was one of them for me. You know, I enjoy what Chivers and Andrea Spina have to say. They're pretty smart individuals, and feel like they've kind of connected the dots in regards to how we've always looked at range of motion. I think they made it make sense from like a physiological sense, versus just being like, hey, if your arm doesn't go up, you know, that's the simple way of explaining things to people. Your arm would need to go up more if you want to do things above your head. But I would say that group, and then probably the dry needling course that I took, I think changed a lot of the ways that I actually treat specific conditions. So that dry needling course was pretty impactful for me, because there are times where I choose not to manipulate something because I think I might be better with a needle there. So I would say that was a really big one for me. And one thing I really liked about that dry needling course was it was a nice challenge on anatomy. And so I feel like that really helps you progress and stay in tune with what you had learned in the past. and it puts you in check. Like, are you actually putting a needle in the thing that you say that you're going to put a needle into? So I would say that that was really impactful for me, and watching others go through that course with me and seeing how poor their anatomy skills were, especially when it came to bony landmarks and figuring out where to shove a needle through certain tissues. It gave me a lot of confidence with, okay, I still know my anatomy. So I would say those two courses were big for me.
How about you, Damir? What did you like?
Yeah, luckily in Illinois, you can you can needle as a chiropractor, and I got to needle, I think early 2015. I think fall is when I took my needling course. So I've had a lot of dry needling experience. That was a great course that I've taken. I've taken all of the functional range conditioning courses, so I think that's something. I think those have been very impactful in the kind of lens that I take a look at a specific problem at. And then, the last, even though I took my first, I guess, PRI course back in 2016, I really, dived deep a little bit more last year. And I think that's another kind of lens. So I guess this just gives you more tools to apply to the right person at the right time, so you save time. You can save a lot of time if you just know how to get to where you're going quicker. A great analogy that I heard somebody say was, you see this people playing soccer in the park, and you see the young guys playing with some of the older guys, and the young guys are in their younger, early 20s, late teens, and they're faster. They can jump higher, they get to the ball, they're quick, they can recover. But the older guys have more experience, and they're still beating these young guys, and there's something to be said about experience. And the more I think some of these skills and seminars you can accumulate, the more experience you have in digesting what comes before you and what to apply and when to apply it. And so I think those couple of seminars have been the most important for me. What about you, Dan?
I was thinking I've taken a bunch of courses. We've all taken a lot of courses. And one that I took.
I haven't taken that many.
Yeah. Well, you know what? One thing I will say this. Yeah, I've taken FRC and stuff like that. Like with Damir, we've taken those together. Taken courses with all of you guys, and I think probably the most impactful ones, now that I think about it, were when we would go to pro sport, because even after the fact, even though we had, or sorry, not pro sport, Parker, when we went to Parker together.
I was gonna say,
It
this
was
is
all of us
post-grad
getting.
we're talking here, Dan.
This is
not
post grad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
Parker was.
we were all grads when we went to Parker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being able to, reconnect and also listen to, seeing students that were going through the same things that we did. And I don't know, it was good reflection, I think. Like there's always information to be learned out there. And there's always like, I think I remember hearing Eric Cressy say it. It's like, if you're practicing the way you were 5 years from now, the same way you were 5 years ago, you're probably doing something wrong. So I think, it's always nice to check in with your peers and see what you're doing and question what you're doing. The other course that I took that got me really thinking quite a bit. I don't know if you guys know who Greg Lehman is, but he came to Victoria like I think it was my first year of practice. I might have actually even been doing my second internship or my second preceptorship at this time, but he did a course at the Massage College in Victoria. And that was when all of this, like a lot of his stuff is this, I think his course is called The Reconciliation of Biomechanics and Pain Science. And that's when pain science was getting really big. That's when like Lorimer Mosby and stuff like that were getting really popular. And a lot of this drive away from like the mechanical side of things and more towards like the philosophical and like the pain science realm was there. And I remember leaving and just being like bummed. Like the course just like, it had me thinking about a lot of stuff, but it also made me realize like it was one of the moments where I realized that the scientific process is so full of holes, and it's just like Swiss cheese. Like if you know how to read a study, you can punch holes in everything. Right? Even the studies that these guys are using, they're trying to like, talk about how there's no difference between the way you bend your back if you're rounded or if you're not flat. Like if you're flexed in your back, or if your back is straight, or you're in good posture, whatever. And I just remember like that to me was like almost like this wake up moment where I was like, I have to just start to piece stuff together myself. I can't just anticipate that other people are going to like pave the road for me. It's like, you know, that was one of those times where like I had to formulate my own opinions really quickly about stuff. And it just was good because obviously I'd bounce ideas off of you guys, and, you know, we talk about it. And I think like that's part of the growing process of being a healthcare provider. Is like you're not just going to regurgitate stuff. You just have to like hear what other people say, look at the facts, look at some of the opinions that you hear, and then come up with your own. So that was a big one for me too. Plus all the, you know, all the times that the good times we got to gamble together in Las Vegas and go out for early morning breakfast, late night breakfast, whatever you want to call it.
What about you, Chris? What did you?
Yeah, I liked the integrative dry needling seminar. I thought that was fun. In Nevada, you couldn't dry needle as a chiropractor till last year. So it was relatively new for me, and it was fun. It was like a new anatomy lesson, and it challenged me on like how much I actually know and how little other people know as well. If you ever want to feel better about yourself, it's pretty embarrassing.
Take it?
Yeah, last year,
recently?
like maybe 9 months ago, I think I finished. A little under a year ago. Yeah.
Nice.
So that one was good, and then I really like Parker. I don't know what it is. Like, you get caught up in the rat race of practice, and you don't like challenge your ideas on things, and you lose motivation every now and then because like, hey, I'm busy, I'm good, I'm fine, I can just show up every day. Everyone's clearly happy, and then you go to these seminars and you see people that are just crushing it and motivated, and then all these new techniques and ideas and thought. I love it. It like revives me when I go to shit like that. I come home and I'm ready. I'm trying new things on patients. I'm super excited to take another seminar and another one after that. So I like Parker. It's like a little rah for chiropractors, but we don't get a lot of that in our profession. You know what I mean? We get a lot more criticism than being proud. Even amongst each other, we talk a lot of shit. I mean, I talk a lot of shit about a lot of people, but it's it's nice to kind of be humbled going in one of those big seminars and being motivated. So that's probably my favorite. I mean, still to this day, I think McClure's seminar is my favorite. That's literally why we started this, is because it impacted us so much that I'm like, man, if we could do what he did, but add a little bit more and takes a little bit away, and man, like the amount of chiropractors we can change. Because I don't think we would be where we were if it wasn't for that one seminar. We could do that and then some. And I mean, that's why we're doing this, right?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that's like one of the things that when people are asking us about like what's the difference, like how is this seminar any different? It's like we're not trying to do something super new. We're trying to fill the gaps, and I think we figured out how to fill the gaps in a manipulation course. Like the things that are missing, like we're not going to sit there and be like, all right, here's the PowerPoint on, you know, what happens with the muscle spindles when you put high velocity, low amplitude into it. It's like, you know, we could pick that apart in regards to research. You know, let's get our hands dirty. Let's figure out how to do these things, do it comfortably, and then actually come up with like a legitimate reason other than, you know, maybe like palpation and touch. It's like, let's marry a lot of other things to really justify why you're going to do this. I'd say like, at least for me, when I was going through course, it's like assessment driven, like, and it's all assessment. Here's how we're going to assess this region. And then sometimes it can be really exercise driven.
Shit.
We're back.
We're back.
What were we even talking about? We got split up for a sec.
So you're talking about the seminar. But like what I was going to say is I think that I think school messes students up. Like I've had a few dudes recently that are in chiropractic school, and before they left, I taught them some stuff, and they had a pretty solid side posture, like going into chiropractic school, and they would come in ninth quarter and be horrendous. And I think it's all right. This is going to sound bad, but I think it makes the teachers feel better about themselves, right? Like they overcomplicate it. And I swear it makes them feel like look at the stuff that I know that you don't know,
Mhm.
right? That's all they want to do is talk about, like, I know all this stuff. You don't know as much as me. I'm going to make it really complicated, and then you're going to see me do it, and you're going to think I'm a god because I can do what you can't do.
Dude,
And
the
where
funny
it's
thing
like,
is,
right? It's like,
oh,
here's tension, move the leg, like put your pisiform on this contact, tissue pull, IVS, M to O, and you're like, stop it. Look, pelvis needs to move forward, doesn't move forward. How would you make that thing move forward?
Yeah.
It's and I think like with this seminar, we can simplify it and make it significantly easier for those kids to adjust. Because we just don't overcomplicate it. I mean, that's what we did when we did that Gonstead Club for a while.
Yep.
These students would come in, they'd be doing all this like tissue pull and all this ridiculous stuff. Stop all that. All right, move this from here to there. Bone doesn't rotate left. How would you rotate it left? Right? It's like they're so focused on that, the patients aren't relaxed because they're like, I think I'm doing it right. And this next, just the patient's like wincing in pain because you just have them torqued out. And like, look at that.
Yank it on like their
work?
cheek.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, just
That's what I think we were talking about. That stuff, man. I feel like it's so bad, and I think it's the educator's fault. I think they overcomplicate it because it makes them feel better.
Yeah, dude. I mean, when Dan and I talked about this when he was out in Arizona. Do you remember when we went to Pro Sport? And I won't say the name, but you'll remember his intro to when he was coming up to do manipulation stuff. And I think this is when it really solidified in our heads, like, wow, like Dan McClure is a freaking awesome dude, like a really stand-up guy. But they had that video of Tom Brady throwing touchdowns, Michael Jordan soaring through the air, fucking about to do his like free throw dunk, and then Wayne Gretzky holding the Stanley Cup, and then the guy doing a fucking rotary break, putting himself like, and then he comes up on the stage. It was awful, and he was lightning fast. Again, the name's gonna stay.
Oh, it's that dude. Yeah,
he was lightning fast. But the things that he did, he was such a terrible instructor. It was more of like, look at how great I am. I am so freaking good. I'm so fast. You'll never be able to do this calcaneus move where it's a push, pull, push, and rotate all at the same time. Or the scapula punch. I'm like, that is so, like, it's pompous, Like a lot of educators become pompous.
I agree with what you're saying, Chris, too. I think that the other thing is that's probably the way it's been for so long, and people are it's like lots of institutions. It's like, oh, it was hard for me going through this and it was complicated, so it's going to be hard for you and it's going to be complicated. It's almost like this like passing of the torch of shittiness that probably is outdated right now. And I know exactly what you like. I felt like watching that guy on stage, I was just like saddened by, like, it wasn't spectacular. It was more like spectacular. This guy was such an asshole to hype something up so much. And I think that like what we're doing is like a truly integrative technique course. Like we're truly integrating all the best parts that we've learned from our years of practice in school, and trying to just like legitimately make it as simple and palatable as we can. It's just like, when you see, an instruction manual this thick, and you're just like, damn, just give me the good parts. Like, give me the important stuff, and just shrink that down to like a reasonable, digestible size. And I think that like we've done that really well.
Yeah.
No theatrics.
For sure.
But
No
we're gonna
theatrics.
have a sweet intro with Michael Jordan on ours for sure.
Yeah. Dude, I'm gonna get some. I think we need to get fireworks next time. The best was when we were in San Jose. There's at one point in time that the conference room that we had this like nice not a mezzanine. Is that what it's called? A mezzanine over top?
Yeah.
Or Joe's sitting up there taking a picture and then happens to just say something and everyone looks up and it's like he's like speaking to everyone from the top of the mezzanine. I was like,
Well, I think the problem with school too is, right, like, you're not, the best way to make a living in this profession is not an educator, right? No good chiropractors are like, you know what? I'm just going to make $100,000 a year. Call it good because I want to. right? He went on his own. The possibilities are endless, right? He can make as much as he wants to work for. So I think they're taught by a group of people that didn't excel in the profession. And I don't think we knew that when we were in school. I don't think we learned that until after school. If you want to learn how to adjust, you have to see someone who practices in real life, right? That's the only way. Those people are not in it because if they could survive on their own, and some of them are good adjusters, some of them are ridiculous diagnosticians, some of them are good educators, but I don't think many of them had all of those things together, and that's why they didn't survive in practice, and that's why they teach, which is fine. I mean, take a little bit from everyone, right? Like, who is that differential diagnosis dude? Wrote all those books. What's his name?
Souza?
Souza. That dude's a god with differential diagnosis. Cooperstein, just a god at challenging our ideas on what we think the profession does. All of them had a little bit, and those things were great, but I don't think many of them had all of it. And I don't think many of them had the adjusting part. And the ones that did maybe couldn't talk to people. You got to be able to have it all. And I think that's the problem with school, right? They're getting educated from people that just don't have what they need to be successful in practice.
Because those people.
So you got to take a little bit from them, and then you got to learn outside.
Yeah,
outside
it's a
those
harsh
walls.
reality.
Yeah,
It really is a harsh reality, and but partially true. You know, like it might not be for every single one of them, but for a pretty large majority of, I think that unfortunately it is true.
yeah. There's a few unicorns in there, right? They're like they practiced for 30 years, they crushed it, and they want to give back to the profession. Those exist too,
Yeah.
but I'd say the majority are not like that.
Yeah, I imagine DeSarbo was one of those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Captain
And it was
Bilbo.
it was also the timing, right? Like that, like there was an era where that things were just so good in that respect. And I think like chiropractic is like this interesting marriage between healthcare and business. And it's like you have to be in the customer service side of it as well. Like if you have a bad bedside manner and you're a surgeon, you might be able to get away with that. But when you're face to face with people and doing the kind of stuff that we are, it's like it really helps when you can communicate and people like you too.
Yeah, when the last practice I worked at, I remember they would always say to me, like, "What do they would question? What do people come to the chiropractor for? To get adjusted, right? So you don't need to do anything else. You just need to adjust them." And I was like, if that was the case, then why does it matter who does it, right? You could just go to anybody. So I always thought that there was a lot more to it than just like being skilled. And like the guy I worked for, he can make a lot of things pop. You know, he was pretty skilled at that. That is hilarious. Look at that cat. Threw me off. But people's personalities, you know, really thrive. Like Chris, like that dude that comes and sees me now that now lives in Scottsdale that you sent over. Like super cool dude, Matt. Wonderful.
Yeah.
But he'll talk about it. He's like, man, you know, he misses you. He misses like hanging out with you. He misses talking to you, hearing whatever it was that you were talking about with him, mainly hunting and random bullshit. That
Yeah, I'm the only chiropractor that talks about politics, but every side. It's probably dangerous.
but dude, he really liked you. You know, he like even
Yeah.
talks about like checking in on you, sending you text messages, just saying what's up.
Yeah.
You know, it's less about like the therapy and more about that relationship that you built with that person. That's a fucking powerful thing, especially with a dude like him that's, you know, pretty freaking connected.
Yeah.
Like you never know who's gonna walk into your door, so you got to treat people like people,
For sure.
but also not being some like robot. Like, hello, how are you? Where pain is today? How's your pain level scale? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst thing you've ever experienced, you know,
Yeah.
it's almost worthless when it comes to like true practice.
What do you think, Damir? Why do you think students can't adjust?
I think I mean definitely I think they learn from shitty adjusters. I think that's number one. Number two, I think they think that whatever they go through the program is probably enough for them. and then they go and get into the clinic or they get into the real world and they realize that they're thousands of reps behind in, you know, dozens of different moves. You realize like, oh man, I gotta, you know, buckle down, or you pivot, you know, and you do something different. And we've seen that, you know, with both our classmates and, you know, our peers and stuff like that. And so I think that's why getting exposure to clubs early as a student is so important, because you see like with the upperclassmen who are also super active, their skill set and what they can do. You're exposed early as opposed to just like along what you're ever, you know, the program gets you going on whenever adjusting is. I remember, you know, Chris was the first of us that was like really into learning a lot of the adjustments. And I remember personally, I was so scared to learn like neck adjustments so early, you know, but it was like, no, man, we got to get going on this. We got to get going on practicing this, because you can't not, you know, be good when somebody's in front of you and they have, you know, pain on top of that. You have to, you know, your skill level should be the last thing everybody's worrying about in terms of treating somebody. And so in order to get to that level, you need to practice a lot. That's just what it is. You need a lot of bodies, you know.
Yeah, everyone's very different. Do you think some people just don't have it? Do you think everyone can be taught, or do you think like can everyone be taught how to adjust, or
I don't
you
think
look at someone and be like,
no,
okay, or do you like, dude, you better get really good at soft tissue?
Or like, do you know how to read X-rays? Like,
yeah. Well, how are you with nutrition?
yeah.
Can you sell essential oils really well? You can't sell essential oils. I don't know. I don't know if that's a point. What do you think, Dan? Do you think some people are like, maybe this isn't for you?
Yeah, it has to be that way. And you know what? I think it's a detriment that the school lets everybody in. And I think it's really tough because like you said, there's so many avenues that you can take. You can get into the nutritional side and rehab exercise side and stuff like that. But I do think that the downside of that is like when you have ideally you'd want everyone to graduate and have like a very base level. But I think that right now that base level is so low that you run into those problems where you're like, you know, you don't even know if that person can, like, it's a completely different experience you have with a patient when, like Damir was mentioning, you walk in there and the last thing you're thinking of is whether or not you're going to be able to manipulate this person. Like when you walk in there and you know that, okay, already my mind is thinking about, okay, how do I express to this person, or how do I communicate and put them at ease, or how do I do all this other stuff? If in the back of your mind you're thinking to yourself like, oh my God, this guy was pretty big, I don't know if I'm going to be able to adjust him or anything like that. That's I don't know. That's, I think, maybe the difference between a person who's working on a bit of a higher level than a person who's just a rookie or an amateur just getting going. But there's definitely, we went to school with people that were just, you could tell. I don't think that they really tapped their potential. Like they never really put in the same kind of effort. And who knows, maybe it's just one of those like self-fulfilling prophecies. Maybe if they did really try hard, maybe they could have, you know, really turned things around. But there are definitely some people that I wouldn't send my worst enemy to. And people they graduated from our school, valedictorians, that I would never refer someone to because they're good at passing tests, but they're not good at the stuff that makes you a good chiropractor, a good doctor. So I think that's the tricky thing. I think it's probably the same way in medicine though too, and a lot of other different, you know, careers and things like that. It's a bummer. I think there are definitely some people who just have stone hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree that not everybody was built to put their hands on people, but it's also like it was kind of like what you talked about last week. You know, when people get the activator, they start using the activator a lot more, is because they just slowly lose their confidence in being able to manipulate. So they start to justify why they're going to do something else. So it's like they're getting this weird cross path happening. And whether that's like they're going to, instead of an activator, let's replace it with soft tissue work, or instead of soft tissue, let's replace it with a needle, or instead of a needle, let's replace it with exercise. You know, they start to find themselves falling away and justifying why a manipulation might not be good, X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
You stop using a tool because you're not adequate with it. You're not using that tool because you don't think the person doesn't need it, but you know, in a lot of ways you kind of convince yourself of that, right? Like, oh no, this person only needs exercise. It's like, well, that person could probably use something to get the ball rolling and then exercise to, like, you know, back it up.
Never do I not manipulate because I can't physically do
Yeah, exactly.
it.
Yeah, you
It's because
choose.
I choose not to. You know, I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
activators, drop tables, and lumbar kick pulls. Those three things. I would
Well,
never send a
the good
patient to
news
you.
for you, Chris, is in March you got to teach the kick pull, or sorry, you prefer
Oh
kick.
God.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, Chris could
It'd
be
still
doing-
be
like,
a probably good.
Here's my lesson on a kick pull. If you couldn't do it the right way, try this. It's better than nothing. That'll work. And if that doesn't work, do a drop table and
Drop
say sorry.
table.
Yeah.
But make sure you apologize and say I'll do better next time. No one's ever left my office with a drop table, and I'm not like just so ashamed. Where I'm like, I don't even want to charge you. I feel like I just wasted your time. I feel like that wasn't worth anything. I'm gonna pay you for taking your time off lunch. Sorry. I hate it, dude.
It's $50 for lunch. Holy crap!
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I think it's a good place to stop.
Don't take us home.
On a nice high note. Yeah, I'll write it home. So still time to sign up for March seminar, March 18th, 19th. We are coming out. Davenport, Iowa, the Black Hawk Hotel. I'll have the website up, hvlaeducationsystems.com. Early 100 will save you $100. Use the discount code. Trust me, it gets annoying when you don't. So, and you're going to want to save that $100. Do it now, because that's going to lock up on February 1st. And yeah, we want to see some good faces, people that are ready to just get better. We're going to be there to assist you in that. All four of us.
Stoked to come.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right, boys.
Can't wait, guys.
All right, boys.
Looking forward to seeing y'all.
Till next time.